Okay, we ready? Yeah, I guess we can. A lot of times it's more Okay, we'll bring this meeting to order. It's the Finance Committee meeting of November 18th. It's about 5 after 7. This is a joint meeting between the Facilities and Finance Committee groups, and we're just going to start right off with the audit. We have our CPA here from Irvine and Company. It's Roxanne. So appreciate you coming tonight, and if you wouldn't mind walking us through the draft budget or draft audit, we'd really appreciate it.
All right. Do you want to read it? We're gonna start in the back. If you want to skip to page 79, that's the federal findings and collection costs. That's basically what we normally call the scorecard. Okay. Okay. So on this page here, you can see for the financial statements, we have an We have an unmodified opinion. That's the highest level of opinion that we can issue. We did have a finding for the financial statements, the details of which you can see in the following pages. And then the federal awards section, we had, again, an unmodified opinion, and we had no findings for the federal awards. At the bottom of that page, you can see the federal programs that we had in test this year for single audit. We did have 3 programs. It was Title I, the IDEA Special Education, and then the Child Nutrition Cluster. Okay, so that basically summarizes the results of the audit right there. To get into the numbers then, we're going to skip back to the front. If you want to go to page 16, that's the statement of net position. These are the government-wide statements, so this is your full accrual statements for the district as a whole, excluding your scholarship and activity funds. So there's some new items on this statement this year. I did give you a separate handout that talks about the effect of GASB 68 and 71 that's being implemented this year for the pension standards. We've been talking about that for the past couple of years, so I'm going to go through that just so you guys can see that true effect. On the statement of net position, to point out to you, at the bottom of that page, there you can see the deficit net position for the government activities is $67 million. That's because of implementing that GASB 68 and 71. Business type activities is your food service fund. We didn't allocate any of that pension liability to your food service fund because you eliminated your employees at 6/30/15. So we didn't allocate a piece of that to that. So net position for the food service fund at the end of the year, you have $93,000. The new items on this statement of net position relating to that GASB 68 and 71, in the deferred outflows of resources, you can see the pension contributions made subsequent to the measurement date. What that is that's the contributions that you made to PSERS during this year. So down below, where we have the net pension liability of $72,116,000, that's a liability that we're putting under financial statements at 6/30/15, but that's actually as of measurement date of 6/30/14. So that's what PSERS provided us as the liability. We put that on the financial statements, so that's why those contributions you made during fiscal year 14-15 had to be added as a deferred outflow of resources up above. The other item then that we have down below is a deferred inflow of resources of $4 million. And that's the net deferred inflows and outflows that PSERS provided us on those schedules. Okay? If you want to take a look at that handout then that I provided you, and if you skip to page 17, which is the statement of activities, at the bottom of page 17, you can see your change in net position for your government activities is $1.3 million. What I did on this sheet of paper that I provided to you, I start with that change in net position of $1.3 million. I added back what your pension expense was that we picked up from GASB 68 and 71 this year for $1.6 million to show that your change in net position this year would have been at $309,000 without implementing GASB 68 and 71. If you then take what your net position was, if you happen to look at your financial statements from 6/30/14, your net position was $3.8 million. If you add that $309,000, your net position at 6/30/15 would have been $4,079,461 if we had not implemented GASB 68 and 71. I then showed the condensed statement of net position excluding those items from GASB 68 and 71, so you could look through that to see that the overall difference there is $71,137,156. Okay? So this kind of lays out the details and shows the true effect of what implementing GASB 68 and 71 did to this financial statement. I'm going kind of quick. Do you have any questions on that?
Well, I think my understanding of this, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but we did touch on this from year to year, correct? Where essentially in the past, the state basically had a limit or a factor of 2.5 times the payroll for a pension liability.
That was their estimate.
That was their estimate.
This is now what PSERS provided.
Which is, as Mr. Small just explained to me, is just our proportionate share now.
Correct, yes. So they provided a schedule to every district in the state. It listed every district in the state, and it showed the total liability for every district. And it lists your percentage, what your percentage of that liability is. A piece of those deferred inflows and outflows that I pointed out on the previous page, when they account for the change, and so they originally started this with the 6/30/13 liability, and then they moved to the 6/30/14 measurement date. If there was a change in your proportion, they included that as a deferred inflow and outflow. They also included a change in the difference between their estimated return on investment and the actual return on investment. And there's also in the deferred inflows and outflows the difference between what they said you were going to contribute and what you actually contributed. This is all stuff that's provided by an actuary. We get the reports and the information from PSERS and put it in the financial statements. So I'm not doing all those calculations.
No, I understand. So I guess for the general public, when they look at these financial statements, what should be the message to them as it relates to the pension liability and how it's impacting our financial position?
The pension liability is what's putting your net position negative.
I clearly understand that. I guess my question is, if somebody looks at that and says, well, gee, what does the $70 million liability mean to the school district?
I'm not sure I know how to answer that. I mean, that's the liability that in the long run will be paid. You're going to be paying that just through your regular set, the set percentage that they're telling you to contribute each year. So as that grows, in this fiscal year it was 21.4%. And then each year they're telling you what you contribute. So as you're contributing that percentage, it's going to decrease that liability. As far as the net position being negative, you're not the only school district. I mean, this is every school district.
No, I understand that, because this is the first time it's being shown on our financial statements. But I think, would I be wrong in summarizing that, in essence, this actually gives the public a good insight as to what the actual pension liability is for the school district? And how salaries and benefits impact our financial position overall?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's so big this year because this is the first time we're putting it on, so that's why it's making such a huge impact. So that's, again, why I wanted to show you this little analysis so you could see what that actual impact was and what it would have been had we not implemented that.
So going forward, then, will PSERS update that amount each year?
Yes.
Taking into account
Yeah.
that they have an extraordinary investment year, that the investment do very well, and then that might reduce the liability, or vice versa, if it's a poor year, then...
Yes, and the liability actually did decrease. One thing to point out, Lauren already provided the MD&A, so that is in here in the draft. And in the MD&A, there is comparative information comparing this year to last year. The 6/30/14 numbers in the MD&A on page, let me just get there. On page 8. The 2013-14 numbers are restated to reflect what the liability would have been last year. We haven't summarized long-term debt liabilities, but that pension liability was in there, and it did decrease from 6/30/13 to 6/30/14. It did decrease. And so every year as they do the analysis, if the liability decreases, then we'll reflect that, and then those deferred inflows and outflows get calculated and amortized over 5 years. Do you have more questions on that, or do you want me to move on?
Is it on page 8?
On page 8, it's just showing summarized financial information.
Yeah.
So it would be included in that long-term debt
I
liabilities
see.
number. Let me see here.
That's all right, you don't have to kill yourself looking for it. Just curious.
What we restated, but that would include the deferred inflows now, and deferred inflows and outflows, that's 69 million. I'm not sure the exact number for the liability, but I do know that it did decrease.
I thought last year it was 72 million.
That would have been an estimate based on what your
Yeah.
payroll was. And then the numbers that we actually got from PCERS this year, they gave us what the liability actually would have been at
I
6/30/14.
see.
And then you have the liability this year, the 72,116,000, and it did
Is that
decrease
this?
slightly from the prior year.
There's schedules for 13 and 14 in there.
Okay. Okay.
Okay?
Anybody else have any questions on that piece? No?
Okay, if you want to skip to the back then, we'll go through the budget versus actual for the general fund, it's on page 64. Okay, so this is budget versus actual for the general fund. On this page, we show your original budget and final budget, which would include any budget transfers you made throughout the year. Going through there, you can see at the very bottom of this page, revenues and other financing sources, over, under, and other financing sources uses. You budgeted to have, to use fund balance this year of $786,000, and you actually used fund balance of $119,000, so a net loss. So you had a positive variance there of $667,000. And if you look through here, you can see in your revenues, they came in $505,000 over budget, and your total expenditures were under budget, $133,000. I don't know if you want me to go into any more details there. I don't want to take too much time. I could break down some of those variances if you would like me to.
I think we actually covered some of this already, Mr. Small,
Okay.
in our
Last
prior
meeting.
finance committee meeting.
Okay, then I'll just leave it at that level. I'm not going to go into the detail there. But at the bottom of this page, you can see your fund balance at the beginning of the year was $4,680,929, and then adding that decrease of the $118,935, you have ending fund balance at the end of the year of $4,561,994 in the general fund. And these numbers are all as of 6/30/15. Okay?
So I think the net from this, at least from my opinion, was on a $53 million budget, we had a variance of $667,000, which is pretty darn good.
Well, that, I think,
Less than
I
1%.
think we're getting much tighter on that,
Yeah,
but we're also actually starting to use fund balance now.
we can try and.
Well, well,
Okay?
we're
If you
starting
want
to.
to skip back, then we'll go back to the governmental funds balance sheet. That's on page 18. And I will show you the breakout there of that fund balance amount, the different fund balance classifications. So of that I'm sorry, page 18. Of that $4,561,994, you have $147,594 that's non-spendable fund balance. So that is for your prepaid expenditures from up above. That's money that you already spent, it's already out the door. You have assigned fund balance there of the $2,192,572. And what that's made up of is $568,843 is what you budgeted in 2015-16 use of fund balance, so more expenditures and revenues. So we put that as assigned fund balance. Then you also have $500,000 in capital reserves in that assigned fund balance, and $1.1 million for PCERS rate increases. That leaves you with unassigned fund balance there of $2,221,828, which is approximately 4.18% of your budgeted 2015-16 expenditures. Do you have any questions on that piece?
And then the restricted fund balance of 107,027.
That's your non-major funds. So what's in there is capital projects. Your capital projects fund, as of 6/30/15, has fund balance of $75,922.
Say that one more time?
$75,922. If you want to
You're
detail
in
those
trouble.
non-major funds, it's on
You're
page
in trouble.
69. Page 69 shows a combining schedule for those non-major funds.
You know how
So
much
in
money
there,
to
we
work
have a special revenue fund, capital projects fund, and debt service.
It's a real short leash.
So your capital projects fund has that $75,922. Your special revenue fund has the $94,105, and your debt service has no money left because you used that this year to pay off that derivative. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay. Then just to touch on the food service fund statements, that's on page 22 and 23. Page 22 is the statement of net position, so that shows your assets and liabilities. And at the bottom, you can see that ending net position of the $93,000. And page 23 shows the change in net position. So in your food service fund this year, you had a decrease of $20,000. Last year, you had a decrease of $88,000, so it did improve from the prior year. And then just a couple of those changes there. The operating revenues did decrease $76,000 from the prior year, but the operating expenses decreased $89,000, and your federal revenue increased $45,000. So it did improve from the prior year. Any questions on that?
I actually have a question going back.
Sure.
In the assigned fund balance, you said there was $500,000 for capital improvements. Is
Yeah.
that an earmark for anything specific, or just that it has to be used on capital
And
improvement?
that's just an assignment, so that's just money that you said,
Okay.
this is what we're gonna use it for.
Okay.
That's not concrete. So if you decide we're not gonna use that for capital needs, you just remove that assignment and then it just could become unassigned.
Okay, thank
Okay?
you.
That may be something we need to move over.
I don't agree with that, but...
Do you have any other questions on
Oh,
those?
okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I thought you meant back into general, sorry.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. If you don't have any other questions on the numbers and the actual statements, I'll just point out on page 50, starts note 8, which is your pension note. So this note with that implementation of GASB 6871 has become 7 pages long. There's a lot of new information, a lot of detailed information, but right on page 50, the first part of that footnote is where we describe the restatement of the beginning net position. So right in there, about the 4th paragraph down, is where we say what your net position was last year, and then what we decreased it to by implementing 6871. And on page 65 and 66, there's 2 new schedules that you will see in there that would have been in there in previous years. And that's the new schedules that are required for the pension for GASB 6871. And that's just a schedule of, it shows the proportionate share of the net pension liability, and it shows a schedule of contributions. And if you look at that schedule of contributions, you can see how they've increased over the years. So that's kind of just hitting the highlights. If you want me to go into more detail on anything, I can. If you have any questions.
So our contributions to the pension went from $744,000 to $4.9 million.
In 2006, it was 744,000, yes, and in 2015, it was 4.6 million.
Wow.
Okay. And I did provide some letters to Lauren. We provide a communication letter, which basically summarizes the results of our audit, and the journal entries are attached to that letter. We had a significant improvement in the number of journal entries this year. They decreased significantly. So Mike and Lauren did a good job in getting the journal entries decreased, getting the books ready for us for the audit. And we also provided a management letter, which has a couple more items that wouldn't be findings in this financial report, but just areas where we think improvements could be made to controls or procedures. So he has those letters if you want to take a look at those. Are there any other questions for me, Ron?
Good. Anybody else have any questions, comments?
And this is a draft, so you can look through it in detail. If you have any questions, concerns, let us know. And Lauren's gonna give me the signed corrective action plan to include the final report. And I'll need the signed management representation letter, and then we'll give you the final reports.
Do you have this in a PDF that you've sent to the administration?
I normally send the final in PDF. Do you want this draft?
Well, I just
one?
want to make sure we were able to email this to the whole board. We
Okay,
have a board meeting on Monday, and it'd be nice if the rest of the board members had an opportunity to look at this before.
that's fine. Yeah, I can email you a PDF draft.
If you
Yeah,
just
that's
send it
fine.
to Mr. Small, that'd be great.
That's fine. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so
All right.
much.
Yep, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time. It was a pleasure as always working with the business office and keeping in touch with you guys. I don't see you often, but
Once
thank
a
you.
year.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I have a question for Lauren.
Yeah.
How does this fit into the bond refinancing?
You approve it on Monday night, and I file it with EMMA on Tuesday morning, so that I fulfilled the requirements under the continuing disclosure. And that's
So for their timeline, does this need to be approved Monday night?
it.
And I would agree with you, that we need to move it, could have moved it. I thought you meant move it back into
No,
the
no,
general, on the sign. I was like, no.
We're going to talk about that when we come
It's,
Okay, so I don't have a lot on the docket here for the finance meeting tonight, other than obviously the audit. I think the second big issue would be to discuss the preliminary budget, which Mr. Small, I think, has some documents for us.
No. This one, I don't.
Thanks.
thank you.
What? Oh, it's really my last name.
I was wondering what that thing, I was wondering what they had to do with, what that had, okay, gotcha. Because it usually doesn't matter if they're not here. So,
Okay, Mr. Small, ready when you are.
Okay. I think you could almost say that it's the blind leading the blind, because we're actually working on 3 years right now. You just heard the results of the 14-15 audit report for the year we just completed. Of course, we're working in the 15-16, and now we're talking about a preliminary budget for 16-17 that hasn't been, we're required to have in place, and we still don't have anything out of Harrisburg.
Sorry about that. All right, so let's start with the main packet of budget presentation that I walked around. This is a lot of material, and this is where we're at right now. I'll tell you what we know, and I won't tell you what I don't know. Third page in Act 1, 2016-17 timeline. As you recall, we're working under Act 1 of 2006 and 16, 16-17 budget. The index this year is the adjusted index is 3.2%. 3.2% of our current millage of 28.96 would give you an index millage of just under 1 mil, 0.9267. We have received from Berks our assessment for next year, which is $1,064,110,700. So index millage would yield a max of 966,389, $166,389. Just as a reference point. The timeline for Act 1 for 2016 is a little shorter than normal because next year is a presidential election year. Because it's presidential election year, Pennsylvania doesn't want to be the last primaries, so primaries moved up, and everything in Act 1 as it relates to opt-out resolutions, et cetera, is 110 days prior to the primary. So where you ordinarily had until very nearly the end of January to determine if you were going to go with a shortened budget cycle and adopt or advertise a preliminary budget or adopt the opt-out resolution stating that you wouldn't go above the index. This year, that deadline is technically January 7th. And then if you wanted to apply for exception with PDE on retirement or special education, you had in March. This year is February 11th. So I just put those numbers out there and the dates out there in front of you. Moving forward to the revenue page, that's actually summarized on the 5-year plan. This is a page of the 5-year plan. Actually, I'll jump over, if you've got that 5-year plan there, I'll jump over and reference that right now. You notice up in the upper left-hand corner, 16-17 budget prep, what I have plugged in from the state side on the revenue is an estimate for BEF, basic education funding, and special ed. This is a number that was distributed last Friday by PDE, but there's no certainty to it. Up until now, I've been flatlining our state revenue because we knew nothing. Well, last week they thought they did know something. I'm not sure we know as much this week as we did last week. So just so you know, in the third column in 15-16 on your 5-year plan, on your 5-year study, if you move down into the state revenue area, you'll see that I did put an increase in over the 14-15 year. I've got a basic ed grant of $8,463,496. That includes that $368 for basic ed, and then I also added in the $154,952 for your special ed. But who knows what that number will end up with. That's why I say it's the blind leading the blind. But I wanted to put some semblance of a number in to the 15-16, the current year we're working in, because we should be getting something. And I added the same number in to the 16-17 preliminary budget for both areas of state revenue, because we typically are held harmless over what we received the prior year. And they were also talking last week about coming forward with a 2-year budget, so we would know in advance what we would be getting for the 16-17 year. At any rate, the other thing that's missing from this overall forecast 5-year plan is your 2016 bank qualified refinancing, which will happen in January. And most of the savings that will come out of that, that's the resolution you adopted in October, the parameter resolution. And if you recall, RBC estimated $400,000 minimum. I've asked them, if possible, they have to look at the bonds that are callable and what have you. I want to plug in as much as possible in the 16-17 years, simply because this is the big hit for the PSERS contribution. If you move to page 2, you will see under expenditures on the retirement 15-16 years, $6,146,134 at a 25.84% contribution rate. Next year it jumps to 29.27, so it jumps to $7,189,677, just what we were just referring to in this pension liability. The number continues to climb, but if you move over to 17, 18, 18, 19, you'll see that it begins to stabilize somewhat. We go to 30.25 in 17, 18, to 31.28 in 18, 19. So this is a reference point. because of that pension spike in 16, 17, I hope that they can put as much as possible of those savings in there to help out. So none of that's reflected in this. So back to the main budget pack, your local revenue is the same as what's on your 5-year plan. There's just additional pages here regarding the various revenue sources. Local revenue, like I said, that's really the only number that I've got any certainty on because of the local assessment that we receive. In the state side, also, we had last year the remains of the block grant was a Ready to Learn grant for $370,000. You don't see that in 15, 16 forward because they told us in the spring that it was gone, it was going to become a part of basic ed. Now last week when they put out these basic ed numbers, they said, no, we're going to bring it back, it's going to be level funding from last year, but we don't know yet what contingencies are going to be attached to it as to what you can spend it on. Well, if they were to give us an additional $370,000 to say no strings attached, that would be great. But that grant doesn't have any carryover. You have to spend it by June 30th. So if they do give it to us and we get it by the end of December, we've got 6 months to plan and spend. So it remains to be seen. They continue to say, even this week, that it's going to be level funded over last year, but they're not going to tell us what we can use it for. So just so you know, that is missing from the 5-year plan.
That was 154?
It's 370,000.
Oh, 370.
So that piece is missing as well. So there's a lot of uncertainty in this whole forecast.
You're also pulling the gaming revenue up there?
Well, gaming revenues only becomes state revenue at the point that they approve it in the spring. It's a part of your local tax up at the top. So once they approve it, then we'll bring it down below. But
The part of it was they were going to take the game revenue and throw it to the,
General
general
fund,
fund.
right.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. As of last week, they said that $600 million is going to go into the general fund. Therefore, property tax assessment abatement, as we've known it since gaming revenue came into vote back in 2006, is gone, but property tax savings is going to be in the 1.25% increase in state sales tax. But here again, no formula on how that's going to be driven out. So much uncertainty that trying to build a budget is virtually impossible. I'm not sure how they expect us to maintain the Act 1 deadline when we're in the corner that we're in. That's pretty much the revenue side of things. Page there we include on the taxation history, which has been pretty stable. Assessed value, we did have an increase when we received the assessment from Berks for the 16 taxable year. So that's going to help out from the local side. Quite frankly, that's what's keeping us afloat right now.
That's all right.
Then the 10-year history on Act 1, another piece of information. Expenditures, what we tried to do there is you have your summary page from your 5-year plan. And then as you move forward, you broke down various areas there so you can see what's represented in the 56 million. But if you move all the way, I already mentioned the pension expenditure and the spike this year, which is just a little over $1 million gross. By that I mean $1 million increase for what we're sending in. Of course, as long as the legislature funds us at 50%, we'll get a little increase in the subsidy as well. Of course, we don't get that if they don't send it to us. But that summary, that's a page out of the October 26th report from RBC. One thing to keep in mind is perhaps in the 16-17 year, but most of it will fall to subsequent years. is that the Public School Building Authority issues 2007, second column from the left there, is the one that's going to be callable during the 16-17 year. And there's, if the market stays the way it is, there's going to be substantial savings for you there. But obviously, I can't plug into that in the 16-17 year. Moving forward on the first breakdown page, what we tried to do for you this year, we broke it down by object, 300 through 800, and we put a brief description of what's included in the object code. So the first page is 300 purchase professional and technical services. And then we broke down by building and area for the buildings, as well as IT, maintenance, special ed, and central office. Showing you the 14-15 budgeted, the 14-15 actual, the 15-16 budgeted, 15-16 year-to-date, and the 16-17. The areas submitted their budgets. We met with them last week and did a little give and take. And as a result, that's the numbers that you see there. But it's broken down by area under each object code. So the folks are here tonight. If you see anything that jumps off the page there, and you would like any further comment, or you can certainly contact them later, or if they have any comments that they'd like to make as to how they submitted, what they submitted, now's the time to get. But that's the expenditure side of the budget.
Is there an aggregated sheet here for?
Page 2 of your 5-year plan shows you the breakdowns in aggregate for the object codes 300 through 900. You see that on the second page under expenditures.
I guess I was looking for an aggregate in terms of IT, maintenance, special ed, central office,
Oh, okay.
because it's, otherwise I'm adding up the numbers.
We can email that to you. We do have those. Trying to keep this as, I
Yeah.
want to bury you with data.
Well, I guess I'll just ask the basic question. So with IT, maintenance, special ed, do those numbers go up or down? And if so, by how much?
Well, I think IT, Scott, if you want to jump in, you have an increase. What was?
Yeah, mine, I expect to go down. There's a couple of heavy budget items. One of them is our internet bandwidth. Right now, we're having a severe problem in the district. Our students really can't browse the internet. That was budgeted based on the current consortium, which is a 5-year deal. We're in the final year of that 5-year deal. In January, we'll probably have updated pricing. I expect that to go down significantly. Internet prices have dropped significantly, but the IU wasn't really willing to ballpark anything for us, so we budgeted around pricing from 5 years ago. Similarly, an infrastructure project, again, was budgeted on a worst-case scenario. We've already been working with other vendors, and that's come down several thousand as is. So I don't expect mine to go up. I expect mine to be coming down gradually.
Where do you expect it to land vis-a-vis last year's budget?
It will be an overall increase. I do expect
Yeah.
that.
Do we have a
I would
percent?
expect probably about,
By how much, or?
I expect probably about 20 to 30,000 over last year until it's all said and done. So probably about 3 to 4% increase over last year's.
And what would you attribute that to?
Again, that's just general contractual obligations as far as like our software licensing, things of that nature. One of the things we brought online this year was some more backup storage for email, the financial system. We're using computers more, and it requires more space, just basically year over year sort of things of that nature as we're doing more with technology.
How about maintenance?
You're talking 300 accounts, or?
All the accounts,
Total.
yes, I'm just looking for a total none.
It's just the needs of the school district.
Well, I don't, so what, is it up or down?
It's gonna be up, yes.
Okay, and that's by how much?
I have to look at the sheets. I forget what it ended up tallying, because I gave an initial submission, and then I had to pull like all the capital items and list that as one big, long, grocery list. So to sit here and tell you exactly where that number is, I know there were increases in supplies, some of the maintenance accounts, so the $4 million are up $100,000 to $150,000, so it's not a huge increase, because all the capital items that I had thrown money in for were pulled out. And I provide that list along.
That's a capital, we're just pulling those out and putting that as a capital expense, right? So the operating budget went up by about 150,000.
I think if I'm thinking of the accounts I increased, I threw extra money for like snow plowing and stuff like that, and just for the expense of salt has gone up with last year's
Is that,
shortage and stuff like that, so
Well,
there was a lot of small
So
stuff.
if I add all these up, is that his budget? Because like, I don't know.
I think it's part of his budget.
Okay, because I just added up the totals of these pages and it comes up to like 1.7.
Yeah, it's not. it's
But
not
I
all
don't know
of
what your, but I mean, off the top of my head, I don't know what your budget is now.
All the payrolls in there, all the benefits and stuff like that are in mine as well. So
Right.
There's some things I can't
No,
control.
no, we didn't mean that. We're just, I guess, trying to figure out if, is it a 2% increase or 10%, and you might not be aware of that at the moment.
I'd have to go grab my laptop and pull up the
Okay.
spreads for spreadsheets, and I can give it to you, on a case by case if you need me to, but.
I think what'll be helpful for the board on Monday would be, and going forward, is just understanding what the change is, what the variance is, and then just being able to explain the variances. So is it due to supplies? If so, what kind of supplies? Is it labor? And if so, I mean, obviously that's generated by or dictated by contracts and things of that nature. So I guess as it relates to all these different budget items, for me, I always just take a look at the variances, and I just want an explanation what the variances are so that we can just better understand why things are going up or down. So I don't know if you guys can take a look at that stuff before
Yeah,
Monday.
I'll throw mine out since we have all the folks here, especially, the number that stood out to me. So under code 500, the middle school was requesting 18.9 for 16, 17, and what they've been actually spending has been pretty low. So something must be in there that you're requesting, Jenny, so.
Well, that says year-to-date, so it is up a little bit. I can tell you that our postage machine is costing quite a bit more, the licensing for that, so that's added into my number. And then also, we've been sending a lot more certified mail, which is a lot more expensive, so I actually increased our postage by 2,000. And then the printing and binding by the remainder of the variance there. And that's really, I did take from some other areas when I did make that increase, so I didn't just increase it and not decrease something else along the way.
Okay. And then,
I'm sorry, mind if I jump
yeah,
in?
right.
So sending stuff certified mail, that's not indicative of a bigger problem, is it?
No, a lot of special ed
Okay.
things need to go.
I was just
certified mail
curious
and that kind of
because
thing.
usually when you're sending stuff certified mail, it's for a reason. So I just wanted to make sure I understood what the reason was. Yeah.
A lot of people not responding, so you need to go that route, that
Yeah.
kind of thing, yes.
Okay.
And just the anticipation, as always, that postage is going to go up, so that was another reason why, we built in a little bit more money there just in case.
And I'm just throwing this out there, this might be, but do you know who the postage meter lease is through? I mean, what company? I mean, there's like 4: Pitney Bowes, Franklin.
I was
There's
gonna say
F.
Pitney Bowes, but I don't know that for certain.
I don't know Pitney Bowes because I don't know if Pitney Bowes does it, but I know some of the other ones have. They actually have like online softwares that you can use for certified. That it might cost you $100 or something to set up the form, but then you save $1 or $1.25 or something for. And so maybe if we are sending a lot of stuff, something like that makes sense to look into. I don't know.
We're looking into that very thing because we're at the end of we're in the midst of when you're still at the brick building, a firm came in and alleged that they were cheaper than Pitney Bowes, but they were an agent of Pitney Bowes. And we've got a bit of a legal skirmish going on right now. But we're going to give you a break, right, but when we do, it's either going to be Pitney Bowes or Neil Bowes. And we will be realizing just what you
Okay.
described.
Every dollar helps, if, you know, so,
Then item 600, preliminary for 16, 17, BEC, NEC, and the central office stood out as numbers that are seem to be a little higher than past years. I'm not sure what that's.
Well, there's like double.
Yeah.
uh,
Purchase professional and technical services, whatever that might be.
Is there any commentary? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Yeah, sure, please.
The line item that says 2015-16 budgeted was actually a reduction,
Mhm.
not what was asked for that year. So they're at, what was submitted as the 15-16 budget for BEC was $56,770, not $36,500 as listed.
So I guess the question I have is, so maybe you can just explain, so, in 14, 15, we spent 38, 15, 16, I'm assuming we hit the number at around 36 based on the audit. I think we're pretty close to most of our numbers. So what would the jump be, that you had, what did you have to have that you didn't need in prior years, or what is this covering?
Well, 3/4 of the budget requested is for operational supplies for the year. Copy paper, lamination, those supplies that we need to get through the year. So I
Yeah.
would say that that's the bulk of it. And in those years, I might not have needed as much because I had the supplies there. It fluctuates year to year, depending on what you have as an inventory.
Lauren, is this the count that we also have the proposed social studies and science
That
materials
would,
in
it's
there?
in that account, but that would be over under central office in the 283,000, included in the 283.
That central office one is off the scale.
That's because we moved textbooks out of the buildings.
Okay.
And you've got everything in central office, the only textbooks that,
So was there an applicable reduction then?
not really, by the looks of it.
trying to think what else is, see your 600 area, can be anything from general supplies to technology-related items, software-related items, to textbooks, consumable textbooks. But any new textbooks are included, budgeted in the central office.
But that's why I was asking, because remember, we had this discussion, I put the technology that I'm asking to replace the textbooks in that fund. And that's why
That-
mine is so much
That should
higher.
be out of that and over into the central office.
It's in my budget.
Well, yours is.
I was gonna say, yours is lower.
Is that what you're saying?
So I'm just asking for clarification as to where this is, because I had budgeted for it last year and it didn't get done, and I wanted to make sure that we do something for those areas, and I wasn't sure where it was. Because it's different from what, this document's different from what we did when we had a preliminary meeting.
I'll get details on the 600 area and what money is included there, because it should be reflected as our meeting on.
Yeah, but Lauren, let me come back to Dave's question. If you moved all the textbooks to the $203,000 central office, these other numbers should be reduced somewhere.
There should be no textbooks included in the buildings.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is if you put the
Should be
textbooks
reduced.
back in the buildings, their numbers would all sky. And it doesn't look like they got reduced very much at all.
Well, there's still a lot of books that get purchased that aren't textbooks.
In the 600 area is all supplies across the board, including science.
So then in the 700 for the AEC where there's the 21, is that for technology upgrades? Is that what this is? For what Mr. Miller was saying?
Replacing both, yeah.
The $21,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a few items like broken smart boards that have to be replaced, things along that line.
Okay,
They're $2,500 a pop
okay.
for each one of those.
Yeah, that's in AEC, you do have, in the 700 area, you've got a couple of equipment items.
Yeah, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
understand what's where, that's all.
I was just
Okay.
struggling reading this because it's different from what we had before.
I mean, maybe, I don't know, for me, I think for me it'd be easier just to see what the building budgets were from one year to the next, and then, you know, see what the variances are in the building budgets, and then, I don't need to know the code, 500, 400, 300, but more or less, it's, hey, look, if this building budget went up by $60,000, somebody just explain what the variance is, so we understand why it went up by $60,000.
Yeah,
Huh?
I agree.
Yeah, and then, I don't know, maybe we'll be surprised, we'll see one or two that went down,
But I do
you
have,
know?
I do have a
Just thought I'd throw
question.
it out there.
And Lauren, I don't know if you can answer this because I don't see Shelley, but on the 300s and special ed, it says we budgeted for 15, 16, 600,000, and year to date we've already spent 515. Are they things that maybe we pay like at the beginning of the year or something, or are we on track to blow that number by 400,000?
For the most part, the reason that's the way it is, she submits blanket POs for the contractual amount for services, so the account is due.
Okay,
already.
okay.
So as the monthly invoices come in, it reduces the accrual.
Okay, so we may not be like way over. Okay, I was just kind of concerned that.
So my 600 account's listed here the same way, correct?
Correct.
If we leave the light and all that.
Because you submit blanket PO.
I want to make sure, because I was thinking the same thing like that.
Oh, I didn't get that
I know
far.
I'm spending much money, that's why.
I got stopped on special ed at 300. I was like, what?
And I'll say, I very nearly had to delete that year-to-date line because of that very thing.
Right.
So very soon, but-
Well, and I know for me too, like some payments get made like there's, once a year or twice a year, and it does kind of off skew that year to date. So that's just why I was asking.
So seeing as we're sort of struggling through this, I guess I guess I'm just going to cut to the chase with the different buildings. So overall, did each building budget go up? And if so, by how much? And maybe you guys can just speak to why they went up or down or flat.
I can speak to mine.
Sure.
Mine went up by about $6,000 overall.
$6,000.
$6,000.
Got
And the
it.
reason for that was that the midget cheerleaders, later midgets, they use our building, and they had mats that our gym teachers were permitted to use, like smaller ones, when kids did different things like the presidential fitness, and they were doing the sit-ups and all that kind of stuff. They replaced them with huge rolled mats, kind of like what wrestling would use, and took those out. So now our gym teachers can't use those huge mats. They're like on these big rollers and whatever. So the gym teachers had asked me, is it possible that we can get mats? So we did look to find some mats. We wanted to get some that are nice quality so we don't have to keep replacing, yet we obviously didn't want them as expensive. That's the main thing. That was a little over $5,000. So that made up for the majority of
What
mine.
did the midgets do with the mats?
I was wondering, can we just
I
buy them?
actually believe that they told me that they took them to AEC. So.
So AEC has a credit.
Yeah, apparently they practice there as well.
Should be a budget transfer between
That's where
the
I was
two.
Yeah, that sounds like some other principal kind of swooped in there and
So.
Okay.
So, and do you know approximately what your total building budget
I can
is?
tell you that my total building budget and my spreadsheet that I have was $101,545. And I was told that it went up $6,195 from last year.
Okay, thank you.
How about your building?
BEC, last year's budget estimated was $75,970. This year's budget estimated was $75,950. reduction of $320.
Well, wait, I gotta ask a question, because you said budget submitted, so does that mean that was budget approved, or does that mean budget submitted? Because there could be a difference. Right?
But I have a question like that.
Okay.
You're talking about what was budgeted.
Yes.
How's this coming year's budget compared to what actually was spent? In other words, if you budgeted 60,000 and only spent 50,000, and this year your budget's 65, that's an increase of $15,000 over what you actually spent. So what I'm asking of all of you is not comparing budget to budget, but budget to actual.
Should I tell you the
You can.
analysis? Yeah, well, so Monocacy had a reduction of $2,450.
Okay.
Between budgets or between actual and?
Between years, between the 15-16 year and the 16-17 year as submitted.
Okay.
Between budgets. Okay.
And I mean, the only reason I was asking what the difference between submitted and approved was because I think somebody had said that, and it might have been you, I apologize, that you requested, you know, your budget requested was X, but what was approved was 20,000 less or something. So that was the only reason I was asking the difference between what was submitted and what was approved. That's all.
Because I actually submitted, last year, the budget I submitted was 106, and this year I'm submitting 101. But again, it's very hard to speak to the actual also, because our budget is frozen during the year, so if we didn't spend it by then, we can't spend it. So we can speak to the costs and the expenditures that we see, that we foresee, but at some point, like a month ago, we weren't able to spend it anymore, so what we spend is what it is. And
no, and I agree with that. That I do agree that just because you have it budgeted, if you're not approved to spend it, it's right. That doesn't mean you didn't need it. It means you went. It could mean you went without it.
That's right.
Andrew, in terms of the high school, it's 222, I think, this year is the submitted piece. 203 was last year, but there's been some disaggregation. So it's really an apples and oranges conversation right now because we moved so much of the text material and probably text material, I don't know, it appears to affect the high school more than some of the other groups because we have all these departments and all these text needs, although they have them as well. This seems to be a bigger piece. And so much of that is going into the curriculum budget at the central level. And so I think when you add those two things, you're going to see that it's a bigger number being spent on students 9 to 12 than it was in the past, or at least it's being requested. And this goes back to, I think, one of your comments maybe a month ago or so, is that we want to make you fully aware that there are some serious needs in terms of text and material that haven't happened for quite a while. So that is reflected here to offset new materials as well as this. I would like us to bring to an end this issue where students are buying their own materials. I was, not to beat a dead horse, but I was in an honors class last week. Students in that class bought their own Hamlet books. So, that is reflected here to move away from that practice. So maybe we can do it and maybe we can't do it, but it's at least I'd like to start to try to.
And I would agree because I brought this up to Connor. I mean, I became aware of an honors class where the kid was telling me that he's bought 13 books. And well, what if you have a student that can't afford to buy 13 books? Can they not take that honors class? Now, I was never aware of that, so I can't really address an issue I'm not aware of. But I think that is a concern, at least for me. If we're not providing materials, there at least has to be some way that if a kid can't afford that, they can still take that class.
And there's, to that point, I figured out in a random sampling, so take it for what it is, that we have students spending between $100 and $145 on text materials out of pocket, okay? That's not all of our students, that's a random sample of students. However, we don't know how many kids, and we'll never know, aren't taking these courses because they're discouraged or embarrassed that they don't have the money and would have to go up and borrow. So I just put that out there for us to consider. I can't give you an answer to what number that is, whether it's a great number of kids or it's not a great number of kids. We do that. So. But I know that there's some.
What kind of effect has it had on text, since we, in some cases, we went from 5 different levels of, say, math to 3? So you have enough books for those 3, because
No, it's a great question. What I uncovered was that our 5 different levels, often, not always, but in some departments, we're using 4 or 5 different textbooks. So I stopped that practice, and we're now buying a singular textbook, because, for quite frankly, Algebra 1 is Algebra 1. The differentiation takes place by the teacher, not by the textbook material. So we had a wide array of books, especially students at the conceptual or applied level, our most basic level, if you will. We're using a watered-down book that would not be reflective of grade level, and I think some of our results are correlated to that. That's not a cure-all in terms of materials, but I do think, again, it's another piece that is impacting.
Okay, so does anybody else have anything to add in terms of the building budgets or any other purchases?
I was wondering if Dean reduced his by the maps he got from the books.
He didn't even know he had mats. He's got to go check that out.
I'm going to be searching for those tomorrow. Really, the big ticket item for us is going to be that textbook versus technology question. That's the big difference.
But
my actual budget last year was $58,000, but I had submitted about $151,000 because of the textbooks that we need. The joke is, it's the same textbook Connor used when he was in school. And that's how old they are.
So,
For
but
science and
the
social
textbook
studies.
versus technology, wouldn't that all come out of central
Right.
anyway? So it's a kind of a moot discussion as it relates to individual building budgets now, right? Because it's all in the central office
But
budget.
my budget's loaded up because I'm looking at the technology side, and it's pretty much a wash between the two.
Wouldn't the technology side be part of that? Be either part of the IT budget, or is that part of the building budget? How do you guys account for that?
That piece is not in my budget.
Well,
I
and
believe
can
it
you
was-
just explain to me what you mean by the tech? I mean, are you looking to replace textbooks with Chrome? I mean, what do you mean by technology versus
What
textbook?
I'm looking at, this is a discussion we've had, is there's a movement towards what's called open resources, where states have now adopted curriculum that is completely online. So it eliminates the textbook, and when you look at a subject like science, which is predominantly hands-on, inquiry-based, then really a textbook is almost obsolete the day you get it. So that's why they're going to something that is online, that is dynamic and changeable and upgradable. If you think down the road 5 years for social studies, for example, we get a textbook today. 5 years from now, with current events in the world, do you think that textbook is going to have huge chunks of it that are not usable now? So that's why I'm urging us to take a look at that option.
I guess the issue, though, is technology changes so quickly, too. So anything you purchase in terms of a tablet or
Right.
a laptop or whatever, 5 years from now is obsolete also, right? So
Are we looking at leasing or buying?
That depends on what Scott thinks. That's something we haven't even had a chance to have that in-depth discussion about what we would propose to you guys.
Well, and then I guess my thought process is too, is that something that we make a more of an upfront initial investment in, but then, that's spread out over 5 years, or how does it work, I guess would be my
We need to
question.
factor in the licensing costs too,
Right.
right? So-
Right.
yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Apps, all of those things have to be factored in. But just rough figures, I did the analysis, rough figures on replacement textbooks and going the technology route with the apps, with the licensing, all of that stuff. And we're at about $3,000 more for the technology than the replacement textbooks.
Let me ask one last question. After the agenda meeting today, I'm talking to Lauren. I understand that Lauren, Jim, you, and I think Rob met with the individuals, or the administrators individually. Now, the board has to approve these numbers, but are the 3 of you satisfied with these numbers?
When we met, it was the first run-through where they presented things, so they were sent back to move numbers, correct numbers. Just like Dana's saying, he had numbers in both spots. So Lauren gave him instructions to put it in the correct location. And then throughout the whole week, leading up to this, they were in conversations on updating and correcting. So this is the first draft pass sitting together again to look at these numbers. So I'm sure they're going to change once we leave this room again.
Yeah, well, and let me just chime in about what's going on with the state for a second, which is a mess. As far as formulating a budget for next year, we can't even forecast how we're going to end up this year because we don't know what money we're getting from the state for this year. And they talked about having a budget by Thanksgiving, which is, I'll tell you right now, it's all but impossible. They're supposed to vote next week on Senate Bill 76, which would eliminate school property taxes. They're not going to vote on a budget till after that. Even if the Senate passes that bill, which is iffy, it would then have to go to the House. Even if they pass it, then it has to go to the governor. So we have no idea. And if they don't pass those bills and they come out with a variation of what the governor and the legislature have been talking about so far, there's talk about giving us property tax relief. But they're talking about property tax relief with a possible referendum for taxes. So we have no idea where we're really going with the budget. I mean, what I talked to Lauren about this afternoon, talking about the budget, was we can pretty much outline our expenses. That's where we're at. Now, depending on what the state does, we may have to come back to Jim or to you guys through Jim and say, hey, because of what the state did, you've got to look at a percentage variation on our expenses. But that's about the only thing, Lauren, if I'm not mistaken, that you could really outline right now is...
We got to start somewhere. And,
Yeah.
And we know we're not going to pass the final budget until June anyway, right? So hopefully by that time, we'll have some firm numbers.
Yeah, the scary part is what Lauren has in here about January 7th to make a decision on Act 1 and February to make a decision on exceptions. And unless they give us some relief from those dates, we're not going to make some decisions in December.
Well, I mean, what we can always do is vote to advertise with the exceptions, and we know we don't have to take them, right? You know,
Yes,
and
yes.
we're not going to, I doubt that the board would vote for any kind of referendum. So I don't think that's even, I think that's a good point. So why would we exceed?
No,
exceed
what
our-
I said about referendum, the legislature is talking about possibly passing that tax increases would have to go to referendum.
Well, I think if they did that, though, they had to have something in that law that said, okay, you know,
After this
maybe we
year.
make an exception to the number of days that you have to get it onto the ballot. But
And that's my whole point, Dave, is that we can think a lot of things, but until they finalize this thing, we have no idea.
Well, all we've ever really done, though, as it relates to the budget, is focus on the expenditure side, because you have no control over your revenues.
Right.
So I don't think this exercise is in vain. I think it's great. We got everybody thinking about these things, and we're talking about it, and people are thinking about their variances and justifying those. That's the whole process. And so I think if we can, you guys can generate building budgets from the business office and then show us what the variances are. I think they did a good job tonight of explaining what they were. We can share that with the rest of the board, and that way everybody sort of has an idea what they're looking at on Monday night. In case any of the board members have questions, these guys should be available to answer them. Anybody else have any thoughts on that piece?
I just got one quick thing. As I said to Tamara tonight, we were just talking about the lights out here, and I think it would be very good for the entire administration team if we kind of had a direction as to, I know there's 2 new school board members coming on, you know, kind of what the school board's goals are for the school district. So, you know, myself and the rest of the administration can get ourselves going in a certain direction. Because kind of right now we're trying to guess what you guys as a board want us to do that we feel is a priority, but what we feel is a priority may not be what you guys have as a priority. So we may be going down the wrong path and spend a lot of our time doing stuff that we really don't need to do. If there's something you want us to really focus on and go towards, like for me, is building security a priority for the school district? Is the cosmetic of the buildings, a priority? Just kind of a general, which way do you want us to go?
Well, I think it's really hard because you're asking for certainty amongst uncertainty, and we don't have any certainty to make any financial decisions, and everything you mentioned is all financial, related. So it's hard. I understand what you're saying. You want. Here's my mission. This is what I'm going to do, but all those have dollar amounts assigned to it, and if we don't know what we're getting,
I think
or when we're going to get it.
Yeah, I think from a facilities perspective, I think it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at our budget and see that, our pension liability is going up by $1 million a year, okay? And you just saw what Lauren put out here in terms of millage increase doesn't even net what the pension liability is, right? So, people from a curriculum perspective, people are talking about, well, let's add curriculum, let's add personnel. Well, we're spending $4 million more a year on pensions than we did 5 years ago on an annual basis, right? So, and that number is going to go up every year forward. So I think we're still sort of in a crisis mode here in terms of our budget. And I think from a facilities perspective, you ought to be looking at building systems, you ought to be looking at roofs, you ought to be looking at the structural issues that are prevalent in the district, and from a health, safety, welfare position, right? Cosmetics, I think, drops to the bottom of the list of all the things that we need to be concerned with, because as you look at the reserve study, as you have your wish list, we have Jim Thompson sort of taking a look at both your list and what the reserve study has to say. We're going to get some more information from him, and I think that's going to drive what we need to be putting in here in terms of a reserve allocation, right, on an annual basis going forward, on the must-haves. And that's going to really outline that for us on a 5-year basis and a 10-year basis.
Well, I just want to throw out, though, I had mentioned to Casey on the way, and then because I've noticed at the last couple meetings, especially with it getting dark, and I like, to me, I know, money's tight, but I think there's certain things that are necessities. And one of the things I think is important is if we're going to meet here, if we're going to continue to meet here, I think there has to be something done outside with lighting for the parking lot. The last few Monday meetings, we've had cars all the way out, to Old Airport Road almost, and you're leaving here or you're coming in and it's dark and there's cars and there's people walking and you can't see where you're going. And to me, I think that's a safety priority.
Well, I think that's something to bring up in facilities, and it's a health, safety, welfare issue, right?
Well,
So
it's facilities too.
Yeah.
Share. No. And that's why I meant, so I think some of those things where maybe it seems like wasted money when we're not buying textbooks, but if something happens out here, it's going to cost us a lot more than that.
But my outlook on the board, though, is that the priority should be coming from our team, and then for the board to kind of say, okay, we agree or disagree, but not for the board to get the priorities.
All right. We're not facilities managers, we're not high school principals and elementary school principals, that's not what we do. If we did, we'd be sitting over there and there. Our job is to sit here as citizens and give you guys feedback on, on a 30,000-foot level on, do we agree with the numbers you're giving us? Is there a different way to think about things? And you're going to give us your list of priorities, and we may push back on that. But for the most part, we're listening to your recommendations, and that's the way it's always sort of been. And we're trying to just get good data so that we can, up here, we're making the trade-offs, right? We're going to trade off a light post for a textbook or a computer for whatever it is. And, that's part of the budget process, and that's where the prioritization of 9 board members is going to really have some influence in it. But I think overall, you guys are the ones that are going to be, our administrative team is dictating what is a priority within the constraints of a budget.
Yeah, Casey, it comes back to what Mike said. Any project you want to do, it's do we have the money for it or don't we?
Correct, and I understand that. What I meant was, there are a lot of priorities in mind that I see every day, okay? I gave Lauren a list of $4.3 million worth of stuff that I feel is a total priority. Some stuff is 8 years down the road, some is 5 years down the road, some is 10 years down the road, but they're all a priority that has to be budgeted now for those long-term items, because some of them are $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 items. So where I'm coming from is everything on that list is a priority. I put money in the budget for this coming year for the items that I felt were a priority that needed to be addressed at all the buildings. All right, because capital money is not being put to the side for those projects. I am then told that's wrong, take it out of your budget because we'll give you money when it's more or less available.
Well, that's the way it works. So you have an operating budget, which
Correct,
takes
but-
care of the day-to-day costs of the school district, maintenance, supplies, those types of things, deferred maintenance. The big ticket items, roofs, replacement of HVAC systems, replacement of floors, whatever, those big ticket items are capital expenditures. And we have a reserve study, right? We have a list, you just hand it to him. We have Jim Thompson spending time looking at your list and the reserve study to sort of quantify in a little bit more detail exactly what those numbers are and when those numbers are going to hit on schedule. And that does need to be put into our overall analysis of our budgets over the next 5 years. What are our capital needs going forward, and are we putting enough money aside for it? I looked at the reserve study that Reserve Advisors put together, and we'd have to put aside $2 million a year to cover the capital needs of the school district over the next 20 years. That's just an unrealistic expectation, right? I mean, there's just no way we can put $2 million aside a year. It's impossible. So you prioritize that, okay? And so maybe you're not resurfacing the parking lots 5 years from now. You're waiting until 7 or 8 years from now when you have the funds available to do it. And you're going to have curriculum, and academics that are going to put stress on the budget as well. People want to, make sure the kids are getting a good education, but at the same time, we only have so much money. We've got to divvy it up somehow. So.
I understand, but what I'm saying is normal maintenance items, I put in money for replacement doors. For example, doors. $1,000 here, $2,000 there as doors break. We have broken doors, I think there's 7, 8, 9 of them at the high school right now. That's a maintenance item. I was told that's a capital item.
I think that depends on how many doors you're doing and how big the number is. Right, so if you're replacing doors, technically it's a capital item because that door should last 15 years, right?
Right.
But
To
then,
me, maintenance of a replacement of broken door is a broken door. I shouldn't be coming to facilities every month with a list of, I have this $1,500 door over here, I have this $1,000 window over here, because now the money was taken, I took everything out of my budget for the most part, except for normal wear and tear items. Like filters and that kind of stuff.
So
that's
the way it works is
That sounds to me like should be part of the maintenance budget because, it's not like you're saying I'm going to rekey all 37, doors at the high school. That's a capital project, but when you have one that breaks, well, now it's a security issue as well. So that's a maintenance need, I think.
I don't remember.
For that one example.
So it's usually done by dollar volume, though. If you've got $20,000 in doors in a year, you put together a capital budget. You should be spending money on capital items every year.
so then we
I mean,
should
that's
get,
just-
so we should have a capital budget then for the year.
That's correct. That's
But
where
we
we're
don't.
headed.
Sounds like
Okay.
That's exactly where we're
sounds like an
headed.
accounting question.
Yes.
So whether it goes to the maintenance budget or to the capital budget, there's $20,000 in doors that has to be listed somewhere.
Right, I think it's. you
Right,
should
but the
be
last
bringing
3 years
it-
I've sat
bringing
here,
it
we
to
haven't done a
facilities.
capital budget. So if he
No,
needs
because we
it,
haven't had any. We've been doing it differently. Lauren's bringing a different approach to this, which is let's figure out what our capital needs are over the next 5 years, and let's set aside whatever the number is, $50,000, $100,000 a year in capital items, right?
my
what
personal
I'm saying is,
disagreement
it
is I
wasn't
think
the
we've
20
been neglecting capital
Well,
items.
I think we need to put more money aside for that.
It's not going to
Yeah.
be a dead horse, but it wasn't a $20,000 project to replace doors. I know I have door needs at the high school that need to be replaced. So I was going to pick away at it as the year was going on, as long as I didn't have any major breaks of other equipment in the building. So I didn't think facilities wanted me to come to a facilities meeting with a grocery list of 30 items every month that are $1,000 here, $1,500 there, $2,000 there. That's what I'm saying about direction. There should be a certain amount of money in my accounts that I have for the normal wear and tear of items like that That
I
all
agree.
had to be taken out of my budget for this year and was put in as a capital list.
Who told you to take it out, Casey?
Lauren did.
And Lauren works for Jim, and I really think this is an issue between you and Lauren and Jim, not you and the board.
It's fine.
The money for the doors, if the doors are needed, I'm sure the board will approve them. But where it's listed is between you and Lauren and Jim.
And I'm just using doors as an example.
Whatever.
Well, it could be anything. It could be hand dryers. It can be, you know, what, I mean, there's just, it's an accounting question, really, is at the end of the day.
Is there a threshold?
But is there a threshold that he
typically there
needs
is
to
a
come to the
threshold.
capital, right, but is there a threshold that he needs to come to the committee with? Because he's right, I mean, he shouldn't, I don't look at it that our
Yeah,
job's to come, that he needs to replace the door this month and a hand dryer and something.
So I have two
So,
hand dryers that have to be replaced.
so is there a
No, typically,
number
the way we had
threshold?
done this in the past, 6-7 years ago, the way we were doing it was, Ken Smith would come and say, hey, look, I anticipate there's gonna be, you know, pick the numbers, 150 doors throughout the entire district that we're gonna be working on this year, and it's gonna cost you, pick a number, $50,000 to fix the doors, and I need to get that approved. Okay? Committee would talk about it, they make a recommendation to the board approves it, and the money's set aside for,
I'll go back,
doors for the
I'll
next
agree, I mean, at the high
10
school,
years.
how many sinks do they bust a year over there? That you gotta replace
We replaced 4 this past year.
so should that be coming to the?
Should that be a capital, or is that just maintenance?
That's wear and tear, because it happens every year.
That's maintenance. I mean,
I-
there's-
well, that's what
there's a-
I would think.
It should be established some kind of threshold.
But technically,
that
it's an
you-
asset that would depreciate, right? So,
Because as a manager, I have a certain amount of authority of what capital money I can spend without having to seek approval. And I think Casey should have the same
I would
thing.
agree.
And that's where I'm coming with just, I can call a contractor and to make a repair for $3,000 or $4,000. But yet I have to come to facilities to replace a $1,000 door. That's my question.
I don't think that's the intent. No, the board's not looking to have you come to us onesie twosie with these things. It's an aggregate number. And maybe, I don't know, you guys talk to Lauren about what, you know, what the accounting philosophy behind this is. But I would sit there and say that if I was managing a facilities of $130 million over the course of a year, I'm gonna take a look at my, you know, whatever it is, a $4 million budget and say, okay, well, look, I typically spend this much money on doors, this much money on windows, this much money on sinks, this much money on toilets, whatever it is, in a given year, and those are, you know, pick a number, $5 grand, $10 grand, $20 grand, $30 grand, and you have a meeting with the facilities committee in September, and you say, look, this is what we typically spend every year, I need your approval to approve these capital expenditures as they come forward. Done.
But isn't
We have
that
a
why
capital
submit-
budget.
Isn't that why we submit our budgets at the start of the year? Because we've already done that work? And that's what's getting approved? When you approve our budget, that's what's getting approved? I've already done that work. I already said, okay, I'm gonna have this much expense. So now I submit my budget, but you're saying that's what I should have done.
No, we're talking about next year's budget.
Correct.
Right.
I've already, that's what I've,
Right.
with the past history, that's what I'm saying is, I need $20,000 for whatever the items are. But that was taken out.
But it's being put aside into a capital expenditure budget, right?
Right, but what he's saying is that he has to go an extra step, and it sounds like there's an extra step to be able to allocate that money that is not under his direct budget, it's over in this capital budget. I'm sorry if I'm using all the wrong terms. But it sounds like he has to go through an extra step to get that money that he had approved, that was originally part of his budget, that he identified all this laundry list of stuff that he wanted to do with this coming year. That's what it sounds like you're saying?
What I was attempting to do when I asked him to remove the capital items from his budget is to establish a separate capital budget that would be approved or recommended by the facilities committee. But it would be in conjunction with whatever Jim Thompson comes forward with, what Mr. Basil just referred to. We've got kind of a three-pronged approach here. We've got Casey's recommendations, we've got Jim Thompson's recommendations, and we've got reserve studies recommendations. We know we can't do them all this year, but I said, pull them out of the general operating budget, and then we'll put them in, and that's my intent.
So the intent would be kind of in conjunction with the operating budget, approving a capital
Correct.
budget. And So if we approve that at the beginning, then he can just pull the door, replace the door when he needs to replace the door, or the, okay.
Yeah, the board's already approved the expenditure of those funds at the beginning of the year. So it doesn't have to keep coming to the
Okay.
board and the committee every single time.
So it's just
to
gonna
do
be
these
two
things.
separate budgets?
Right, and I think from my perspective, when we're managing our facilities, what I like to see is a separate capital budget, because it allows me to see trends, right? So if we're spending, 1 year $10,000 on windows, and next year it's $50,000 on windows, and next year it's $70,000, well, what the hell's going on with windows, right?
Right.
You can't necessarily track that in an operating budget, it's part of the overall operating budget. So why is the operating budget going up? Now you're going in and trying to pull these little tiny things out to figure out why you're getting those
No,
larger
and
variances.
I agree, I think that's true. I think the concern is that there's not gonna be that capital budget that gets approved, and now he's gonna need a door, and he's
Well,
gonna have to come.
I think that capital budget gets built out based on experience, gets based on these reserve studies, his expertise on what needs to be done, Jim Thompson's, and we flesh that out. I mean, that's one of the things I want to talk to you about, is we need to have a reserve line item on our expenditures that's going to meet the needs of the capital needs of the district going forward. It's not $150,000. I mean, it's going to be something a lot more significant than that every year. So that in 5 years, we need a new roof on wherever it is, the high school, I think is the next one. We're probably looking at a new roof. That's $1 million roof. We need to start putting some money aside for that.
But
You know?
I have another thought. Mike said, but what's being discussed is an extra step. I don't necessarily see a problem with an extra step. One of the things Lauren found when he got here was that money was being expended without going through proper procedures, proper authorization, and we were spending money that we didn't necessarily have to spend. So is one extra step, when we are in a budget crisis, as you said, is an extra step really that bad?
I don't have an issue with the extra step if we approve a capital budget along with the operational budget. But if you go back over what we've done the last few years, we haven't done that.
No.
I mean, I've asked the last 2 years, we need to put money in facilities, and we haven't done that. So I'm okay with the extra step if we actually do it. That's all I'm saying.
Well, you do have 500,000 in a capital line, so.
Right, but if he needed a door out of that 500,000, he would have to come here to do that. And I'll be honest, I think that's silly. If the door's broken, a door needs replaced, it needs to be replaced.
I just think there should be some type of threshold of authority that he has to,
Or
that he can make that decision.
or that Jim
they
has,
work
so
out.
somebody has, right.
We're not referring to one, we're referring to, as you mentioned, regarding locks. When we want to replace 3/4 worth of doors in a building because they need to be. But the other piece to this capital budget is it has to be multi-year.
Right.
We've got to get a 5-year plan out there at minimum, and the funding to support it. And what we discussed a year ago when we first got into these bank qualified issues was, can we take some of this? We didn't do it last year, but moving forward with the refinancing of the state pub, there could be sizable numbers there that we could take a portion of that to fund a 5-year capital plan. And that's part of what Jim Thompson was talking about bringing back, was his prioritization. And once again, we bring the 3 programs. The numbers in that $41 million reserve study over 20 years, I forgot what the number was for the first 5 years, but that's what we got.
It was like $8 million, $10 million, yeah. It was a lot. And I just don't see us funding it, and it is what it is. But
Well, no, I think you have to fund it. I mean, this is what I was working on today. So, I mean, what I did was I aggregated all those expenses based on the reserve study that we had, because that's the only thing I have, over between 2015 and 2024, so a 10-year period. And if you take a look at the expenditures, we need approximately $18 million worth of capital items replaced over the next 10 years. So that's $1.8 million a year. You got to be putting aside. Now, I think these numbers are probably a little high, and they're probably not allocated correctly from year to year, and that's what Jim Thompson and Casey are going to,
but even if
sort of
it's half
validate.
that, we're not doing it.
I agree. So you gotta take some money, you gotta put some money aside. We already have $500,000 sort of assigned within our fund balance towards capital expenditures. Maybe that needs to be $1.5 million assigned towards fund balance. And then you gotta be plugging into this 5-year budget, another $500,000 a year at least.
I guess I'm just, and this will be the last I'm going to say on it, I think there should be, if there's a need, until we get all this budgeted, we have to start putting money aside. Casey's treading water with a lot of these things. And, you know, maybe he's identified some of these things that can get done right away, as long as we're not postponing the things we know we need to do, waiting for the whole big picture of the reserve study and everything to come forward between now and then, that as long as the money's available to him.
Well, he's currently working on the budget that's been approved for this year.
Correct, and I'm fine
So-
for this year, we're picking away at things this year. I have some concerns for next year.
Yeah, we're just talking about next year's budget, and we should have all this analysis done in the next 2 or 3 months.
I told Andrew before the meeting started, I have to leave. Let me ask 3 quick questions, please. Sodexo, this debt, where does that stand?
I'm working with Brian on it as we speak. I've got to get a report away.
What is the next step in the process?
I'm writing a narrative with our argument, and Brian's going to take it. He emailed me yesterday.
Okay. Copying machines, Scott, do we have controls on our copying machines, so somebody can't go in and just run off 300 copies without us knowing who it was?
Not currently, no. That's something, that contract ends at the end of the school year, and that would be something we want to put in place.
I think it's important because just talking to different administrators, I think there's a lot of copying that's done.
I can confirm that. Yeah, we're going to be rolling out that sort of thing on our printers this year, and then the same software we'll use on the printers is supported on many copiers. Now, ultimately, it'll be dependent on the hardware we get next year, but yeah, that's a commonplace thing to really do.
All right, last question. Tamara mentioned the lighting outside of this building. I told Jim when I came in today, the flag wasn't up again. We have to have a flag fly.
Well, I think that's the lighting. I think the lighting needs to come as part of that too.
Well, I just wanted to mention that because I told Jim, as a veteran, I want a flag fly.
I have to apologize for that. Frank is the custodian that's here almost every morning. I had him head to an emergency this morning at another school district, another school. I came in, I started doing my paperwork, and I forgot the flag. I mean, that's on me. I'm the first one to admit
finger
it.
at who didn't fly the flag. If we had a light, even a spot from the building up to where the flag is, the flag would stay up all the time.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of municipal buildings, they put a spotlight on the corner of the building and they shine it at the pole 35, 40 feet away, and they leave the flag up 24/7. I don't think you need to worry about taking something over and wiring it and shooting it straight up the pole. I think you just get a spotlight on top of the building.
There's a technical.
You don't have that electric up there.
Technically, you have to shine it from 3 sides.
Well,
Something's better-
get 3
something's better than
spotlights on the
nothing.
corner of the building to shine over there. Go down to Tredyffrin Township Municipal Building. That's exactly what they did.
I'm not arguing, I'm just saying, technically, if you look at the flag flying rules, it's supposed to light the flag from 3 sides.
I've been to a
I
lot of
think
municipal buildings,
something's
I've
better
seen
than
multiple
nothing.
spotlights
Yeah.
mounted on the building, shining at the flag, 100 yards away.
I agree with you, Andrew.
That just seems like an easy fix.
Actually, I talked to River Rock, and they're willing to have their kids dig the ditch over to the flag.
Yeah,
I like
the
As
driveway.
community service.
I like
So,
it. Put 'em to
I'm
work.
actually in conversation with them about it.
All right. So just sort of moving through here. I guess my impressions of so with the budget, will you guys, I guess, put together the building budgets, and if you're starting to work on a capital budget, maybe you can put a line item aside for, I don't even know what number you're going to put in there, because when I was looking at this stuff, because I was trying to work through level funding, I mean, I don't even know what the number's going to be based on the capital needs. So I don't know what the $4.3 million list case that you had over the next 5 years, but, I'm looking at $18 million off of the reserve study. I think that's high, but, $4 million is probably not enough either.
It's not, it's just,
So I don't know what the number is, but I think we need to you got to put some sort of plug number in here, Lauren, for reserves.
Well, there's 150 in in the 16-17 year under your 800
Even-
other.
I think we need like $1 million, wait, yeah,
I'm saying,
okay.
but there is 150 in that number. There's some other numbers throughout the budget, but I go back to what we discussed a year ago when we first got the reserve study. At such time as we do substantial debt
Yeah.
refinancing,
Yeah.
we would tap into it. And I think that's your main source.
Right. Right.
In the meantime, I've got the $500,000 that I earmarked.
Well, when you look at, I'm sorry, not to go, well, when you look at that substantial debt replacement, because like this past year netted us what, a couple $100,000?
So you had about 1.3 million total in two bank qualified loans.
That's where the
It's
$500,000
earmarked
lies.
on your study
All
here.
right.
390 went in the 14-15 years, 784 went in 15-16, 16-17. 16-17 has 197,753 in debt savings. Now, with the 2016 issue, hopefully there'll be 400,000 coming into that. You have to make a decision then what you want to use it for. But what I'm saying is, you have right now in the assigned fund balance, we have earmarked 500,000
Right.
coming out of the 14-15 year that's available
Okay.
this year. So as you move forward to that 17-18 year, you have a 5-year capital plan in place, and you realize substantial savings in that state pub authority, you could spread that over 5 years.
Yeah, I think the issue is with the pension liability where it is taking another $1 million jump. Once we get past 16, 17,
Right.
provided
That's
our
stabilized.
employment stays stable and the contract is stable, that, as you see here, it goes to 7.1 million and then it levels out.
Right.
That makes it a lot easier to start allocating more dollars to other things as opposed to everything going into the pension and into salaries.
That's the two things you've got going for you, is stabilization of your PSERS and savings in the debt refi.
And that's why it's critical, the contract negotiation is critical.
Right. Right.
But I do think we need to put a bigger number in here for under 800 towards capital reserves, so you can see.
Tell me what you like in there.
Well, I was going to try to give you an idea, but as I was playing with this thing, I was putting in, I tried it several different ways, 150 this year, 250, 350, 450, 550 over the next 5 years. As you're increasing it, it wasn't quite enough. But I don't think that the expenditures that I have listed here through the reserve study are accurate enough to be able to do that. So really, it's going to come down to the information we get from Jim Thompson and Casey,
And then get real quotes.
and then get real numbers. I mean, when I talked to Jim Thompson today, he thought the reserve study, in terms of the items being listed and the timing, was a very good guide to use, which is what it's supposed to be. It's a blueprint. He said, don't discount the value of that work. He said, what I really want to do, though, is actually get in there and tweak the numbers themselves, because level funding for a school district doesn't typically work out. You just don't plug in $500,000 in there, every year, and then you watch your balances go up and down. He wants to get a little bit more granular with that analysis. So
Could we use, though, maybe 500,000 right now for a placeholder?
I think $500
So
million a year.
that we can kind of build that in as we're building the budget, and then we can tweak that later?
Right now, with the 150 that's in there, your ending fund balance is 780, so if I put in another 350, but then remains to be seen.
But you're going to end up with a negative fund balance sooner, that's all. And then what
But I
remains
need to know
seen.
that.
Well, and then it remains to be seen. You get $400,000 in bond refinancing. You've got an opportunity in 17, 18 for another bond refinance. He's still doing the analysis on school configurations and things of that nature. There's a potential of $800,000 in savings for a building closure if,
Right.
if enrollments continue to decline. So there's some big numbers that are floating out there 2 or 3 years from now, next year and 2 years from now, that may have a dramatic impact, and those could be found monies that go towards reserves. They're going to have to, quite frankly, given what I'm looking at. I'll email this around to everybody so you can see what I did with the reserve study. If you find it helpful, great, but
Thank you.
I talked to Lauren about this earlier today, the Health Trust, what was the guy's name, Jim Copeland or something like that? What was his name, Bob?
Oh, Rob Cole.
Rob Cole, right. So, he had just spoken to you earlier today about where we stood with getting information for the Health Trust. This is what you're passing out?
Well, this is updated cash flow, but Dave is working on confirming a date, and he can come in and give us the preliminary report. That's just an update on the cash flow.
On the cash
Oh,
flow.
okay.
We're still, where we were.
We're good till March.
Do we have, I remember, do we approve or do we have to talk about deferring to December future day?
We defer?
I think we deferred it.
We voted
We
to-
deferred it, yeah.
Charter or
Okay, I don't have anything else on my list. Does anybody else have anything on their list as it relates to? Any comments? Special thoughts? None? All right, what do you want to talk about?
All right, well, I'm gonna speed through mine because I need to get out of here soon too. So, Casey, I really didn't have much. He wanted to talk about some of his staffing needs, and then I just wanted an update on where we were with some of the equipment that, like the trucks, and seeing how we're gonna make out for winter. So,
Staffing needs, the only real need is the assistant director position. Jim and I had interviewed the two candidates. We got about 10 or 11 resumes. Two guys who I happen to know, actually both of them, one probably for about 25 years and one for about 14 to 15 years. I was actually kind of surprised they both applied with the positions that they were in. But we interviewed the two. And Jim, feel free to jump in whenever. We interviewed the first candidate is currently a facilities director at another school district. He can definitely just jump right in to assist me in everyday, day-to-day activity. That would be my preference. He's actually the director of another school district, a local school district.
The opportunity to work with you, that's really,
Believe it or not, it is one of the things, he did tell me. But when he applied, I actually called him and said, are you sure about this? And he said, yes. I just don't want to mention names because.
yeah, I would say because that's really more. I guess so. Because I mean, at this point, I guess I would need to go to probably like a personnel. I mean, you're exact, but maybe I guess so. What I'm looking at is you've kind of identified somebody you'd recommend.
Correct.
Between the two of you. I mean, I know this was where we were kind of taking two positions and combining into one. Is that what we were recommending?
Correct. I had a custodial position that I did not fill, and then I have an electrician who left February of 14. So it's not really both positions. It's more to replace the electrician. The custodial position is kind of hanging out there. I moved a custodian to a floating custodian for first shift, which kind of uses up some of that custodial spot that was open. But I have a position that's open, an unfilled position from the start of 2014. 15.
So I guess what I would think at this point, we would make a recommendation.
It's going to come down to a salary. He had given us a range of salary requirements. I don't know if that needs to be discussed in open forum or if that needs to be discussed, with you guys on the board on Monday night to approve.
That's probably what I would do.
That's why I'm kind of being a little vague.
Yeah, I mean, you've done this more than I have, but I would think that maybe Monday night. Do we have exact? Is this
We
our?
always have an executive
All right.
session.
So maybe afterwards we could just have an executive session. We could decide.
Is that what we heard this morning? No executive session Monday night?
No executive session. This is
It
something
always
that,
seems to pop up, though.
the salary is something that we need to discuss with Lauren first
Okay.
before we bring it to the board, because I'm aware of what he wanted. But we haven't spoken to Lauren at all yet.
Right, and that's,
So this, we're being a little preemptive. on-
Okay.
And we need to speak with Lauren.
Okay, all
And
right,
this just happened a couple hours ago.
okay.
Well, if we have to have a impromptu executive session, we could certainly have that on Monday.
Yeah, but-
Nothing prevents us from having one on the spur of
Okay.
the
Oh,
moment.
yeah, I just want to run the numbers.
Okay.
with Lauren
Yeah.
before we.
yep, and I'm just,
Yeah, no, I do think you need to get, I mean, I do think you need to get that position filled, so I don't think any of us are against that, so I think we would certainly take
And
your
this is
recommendation.
a working assistant to you, not just riding around in a truck,
No.
okay,
No.
like was
No.
insinuated.
I'm not
It
going
wasn't
there.
insinuated, it was pretty much laid out. He said it.
But he's going to have the same, he's going to have the HVAC experience,
He is an AC
mechanical that you
certified.
have, that
Correct.
nobody else in the district has.
Correct.
Because that's, when you're on vacation, we're hanging out there, we're getting a contractor in at a higher price to
Yeah.
do.
He's looking for security, more or less.
He's also looking for a lot of money.
And then we just had somebody,
We have
Retire, right,
a
resign.
groundsman, a groundskeeper retiring in January. I am not looking at replacing that person with a person. I'm looking at replacing that person with a piece of equipment. I actually demoed the piece of equipment a few weeks ago. It is, believe it or not, a zero-turn mower with a 10-foot deck. I can mow a
60
soccer.
miles an hour?
I can mow a soccer field in about 10 minutes.
There's all the hardware in there, so when you take your foot off the gas, it stops?
Correct, yes.
we don't want to take out another building.
It is,
You have to have
it
it
is
explained
a
out.
belt-driven, and what's unique about this piece of equipment, it's a 10-foot deck, but every 2 feet of the deck has a hinge.
So you can
it-
pick a
it
piece
is-
up.
It does this, I can go
Okay.
over mobiles, I can go in gullies, I can, your normal wide area mowers are 3 large decks, usually 4-foot decks. This is it's a 1 10-foot deck, and it's pretty slick. The vendor brought it over for me to try it, and it mows, I did a test. I mowed half of the soccer field with this one. The next morning, I had my guys come over with our piece of equipment and mowed the other half. Mowed half the field, and then they did 2 laps around the goal to equal what I did with the mower. I did it in about 5 minutes and 30 seconds. They did it in about 12 minutes. So it is twice as fast. I can definitely replace the person with this piece of equipment.
And the cost for the piece of
It's
equipment.
around 45, and that's CoStar's.
Any issue with the winter work?
What's that?
Any issue with the winter work, plowing?
No, the only issue with the plowing is our trucks, the 2 new trucks, Ford has not scheduled them to be built yet, which means, When-
Does that employee do the plowing?
no. And he leaves at the end of January, and I didn't have him last year anyway because he had his foot operated on, so it would be the same as what this past winter was. But speaking of winter, the trucks, as of last Thursday or Friday, I forget what day it was, they were not scheduled yet by Ford. When Ford schedules them, they're 4 to 5 week delivery, minimum. So it definitely looks like I'm not going to have them.
Maybe
for-
El Nino will,
I hope El
They don't-
Nino pushes up there and we're not plowing until February, trust me.
They don't have anywhere on a lot somewhere?
They did, but they were much more expensive.
Oh,
Because we're ordering a more or less a bare bones for what we need, rather than
right.
the other bells and whistles that are on the ones on the lots. So I just want to let everybody know that, we're definitely going to have some repairs for some equipment here, much needed very soon, to get prepared for winter. I've talked to Levan Machine. They have the plows, so once the trucks show up, they will know from Whitmoyer about 3 weeks prior to delivery, so they will schedule it accordingly. and then they'll just move that date accordingly until the trucks are delivered. So they're gonna put a placeholder in for us.
They're scared.
So they know our needs, so they're gonna get it done ASAP. So they have everything in their shop for us, already earmarked for us, that if for some reason Ford decides, oh, by the way, somebody canceled this order, you now have a truck. And other equipment needs, I'm kind of on hold until we figure out what we're doing with the mowers and the staffing and stuff like that. But, you know, right now, I just have our Dodge truck will need a plow in preparation for, that's the one that blew up last year, so.
Well, when we did the trucks, we approved the plow, I think, did we?
A replacement plow.
Yeah, that was just an operational account.
Okay.
That we were gonna use for that, so.
We already did approve the new plow, correct?
I
No,
thought,
I have the PO cut and Lauren has the.
So what happens to
Lauren has
that
the PO.
plow after this year? Is it used again? or is
Oh,
it-
it'll be used every year.
Okay.
We'll have 5 trucks then that we can plow with, so, I'm not gonna worry about doing the salting this year, so we'll defer that until next summer, you know, to do the salt bin and have that expense, because we're not gonna have the trucks. So there's no need to spend that money now when we're not gonna have the trucks to do what we wanna do with that. So, so really my only, I won't say my only expense, but the only expense to really get ready for winter would be the Dodge truck. I ordered the rock salt today, so I ordered 6 skids of that to get stockpiled at the high school and the middle school, so we'll be prepared. That should be delivered in the next 2 weeks. So and that's just the normal operational side of things too. So, but that's all I have. I'm kind of on hold till Jim comes back with, you know, with his answers as to where we're headed, you know.
well, and I guess realistically, even with the mower, we have a
And we have
time to,
time.
yeah, we
The
don't
only
have
issue
to.
is almost, Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, I think almost all your mower manufacturers have a price increase usually at the start of the calendar year.
Should be the end of the month.
End of mowing season, okay, so hopefully the price will stay kind of flatlined. It may have a 1 or 2 or 3% increase, depending on how that manufacturer, you know, does their pricing.
What do we get? And Lauren probably told me, and I don't remember. What did we get for all the bids for the equipment that we were selling off?
At this point, nothing. The responses were
They rejected them all.
insignificant. So there were 2 pieces, Casey and I were talking about this today, there were 2 pieces that we considered. Now we're trying to get set up on this municipal bid website and re-advertise it that way.
There's a website called Municipid that's like an online auction.
Is that what you're using?
We use, when we sell, we have not, we're gonna sell a police car on there, but we haven't in the past, but a lot of municipalities, it goes all across the state, and, people seem to have good luck with it. So, and you can set it.
Is it loaded, you know, based on percentage they take, a percentage?
No,
of
the
it?
buyer pays the fee. So there's no fee to the governmental agency. There's a transaction fee on the buyer, and you can set a reserve, or you can reject all bids. I mean, same type thing.
Sure, it'd be nice if we could trade some of the stuff we don't want for something he could really use.
And
Well,
a lot of that don't want stuff, we either got such a ridiculous bid that it wasn't even ethical to sell it, or we didn't get it.
I would, and I don't know, I mean, you'd have to ask, I guess, Brian his legal opinion, but what we've done is we've gotten a trade-in quote from the company that we were going to get something from. And then we've set something up for auction. And if we don't, for the sealed bid, if we don't get a bid that's as high as the trade-in, then we trade it in, because it's almost like that was the bid. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I don't know if you can do something like that or not.
Our problem was we're buying John Deere, nobody wants our.
Oh, that's true.
That's the issue.
Well, that's a good point too, and if you're not buying
Deere
John
doesn't
Deere.
build this piece of equipment for.
It's Lastec, I think is the name, if
Okay.
anybody wants to look it up. The new piece, it's pretty slick.
Can you just put this stuff up on Craigslist, or not getting any more? just if you can sell to somebody locally.
I suppose up to other
I
possibilities.
mean, I gotta believe that if a small, like landscaper or somebody else would be much more willing to pay for something like this than,
I thought we did a much better response. That was my prior experience, and that was just what you were describing.
yeah,
It was, I mean, this area, everybody was a landscaper.
yeah.
Well, and that's why, I wonder, and that's why the municipal might work, because it is a lot of times local. You know what I mean? People are on it locally, but I don't know. That's all I had. Other than I do really think we need to look at lights for out there. So maybe you can work on that.
They just need to dig the ditch a little further when they get out there.
I don't know how to do it, because I know it's a big parking lot, but it's,
There's no electric out there at all.
I don't know, do you know? How did they function, how'd they function when this was an elementary school where there was no lights in
There's
the parking lot?
There's a,
It's well lit on this
on
side.
this side, they have
It's horrible.
That's a meta.
Faber.
It's horrible.
Well, they may not have had lights because somebody in this neighborhood didn't want lights.
Maybe the cemetery was.
Yeah.
We may find out.
Right.
Somebody in the neighborhood.
The lights you have at the back, this back parking lot are Med-Ed owned, and we pay a monthly maintenance fee for them. Med-Ed put them on. The bulb goes out, I call Med-Ed, and they come and they replace it.
Somebody stole all the ones out front.
You pay the electric for it though, too, probably.
No, we just pay a monthly, it's about $360 for the 17 fixtures that we have. throughout the
Okay,
school
okay,
district.
so it's almost like streetlights, like,
Yeah,
okay, you pay.
it's very similar. Based on the fixture, we pay a certain fee.
All right. Anybody else have anything for facilities?
Nope.
All right, I'm done.